Welcome to What Would Sabrina Say? I'm Sabrina Dong, and I'm excited you're joining me today. In this podcast, I dive into mental health topics on relationships and overall well-being. With over 20 years of experience as a licensed clinical social worker, I share insights and invite expert guests who are passionate about making a positive difference. I started this podcast because I was frustrated with the often misleading or recycled information in social media involving self-help and in the mental health field. My goal is to provide you with genuine, useful content that's educational and informative. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you find our conversations both enlightening and empowering. I'm glad you're here. So thank you so much, John, for joining me. I'm so excited an honor to have you here and talk to listeners all about executive coaching. And a lot of times there's requests about finding a coach, finding someone to help with life transitions, stuck points, where to go to determine how people can find the ideal or right job based on their skills and their knowledge set. So just wondering, can you share with us a bit about your background, your journey into executive coaching?
Yeah, of course. First of all, thank you again for having me. It's an honor
You're
and a
welcome.
pleasure to be joining you today. Yeah. So my coaching journey, I'd have to say it started about 20 years ago now when I was in business school. And at that point, I was essentially in school to try to figure out my own career transition. I actually studied biology. I did a master's. That is what I wanted to do my whole life. And then when I got there, realized it wasn't for me. So my solution was to go to business school. And as part of that program, we had a professional development course. And one of the modules within there was actually about coaching. And the person who taught that course, Julie Johnson, she was an executive coach. I've actually stayed in contact with her since then. So she's become a friend. But with the very start, my introduction to coaching. In the subsequent years, I became an entrepreneur. I had a multitude of coffee houses, I ran a hotel, restaurant, supplement store. I journeyed into other career paths.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah, I've done a lot of different things. And then at one point, I went into the fitness industry. And as an entrepreneur and as a manager, you're doing some coaching, informal, but in fitness, you really have to start to develop those coaching skills. And at first I was a personal trainer, and then I became a fitness manager. So my job was to essentially help personal trainers to build their own businesses, to build their skills, to build their confidence, to really help them manage their business. So that the coaching really became formal. My focus was to help these people work towards their goals. So yeah. Sorry, go
And
ahead.
how, I just thought, just amazing in hearing about your journey, because sometimes, especially for perhaps younger listeners, right, in university, you always feel like there's just this one path to do something, or you spent all these years in schooling, you have to stick to it or else it's lost or gone. And just to hear you take risks and grow and try different things, it's amazing to hear that. And that using that expertise to help others too, to say, you know what, it's okay to change jobs, to try a startup.
Yeah,
And it's okay that sometimes these aren't always successful and it may lead to something else.
absolutely. I think when I did get to that point when I was in my master's studying biology and had a crisis, it was a real crisis for me at that point of what am I going to do? I have no other ideas. I have no other plans. Put in all this time and essentially built this sort of career identity around that. And that is definitely something that can hold people back. I had to face it. And so once I got over it, was able to tackle it again and again. But you mentioned really two things. One of them being that investment of time. People feel like they put so much time into their education or even their career path, and they put in so much investment that they don't want to walk away without something. There's actually a business concept they call the sunk cost fallacy. right? You spend this money. If it's putting more money, putting more time in isn't necessarily going to give you a better result. So being able to really examine where you're at and what you really want. And then also trying to figure out, even if you're not following that same career path, what have you learned from that time?
Right. What have you learned along the way that you can apply?
Absolutely.
In the moment, in the midst, like you said, of a crisis, it may feel like it's all for nothing. But afterward, you're learning a different niche or maybe working different population or interests. So it's wonderful to have someone like you to guide and support, right, through journey. And also that you've experienced it yourself,
Yeah. Thank
right?
you.
And that's great. So I'm wondering if you could share what coaching is all about and are there different areas of coaching?
So there are definitely a lot of different types of coaches and areas of coaching out there. I myself, an ICF accredited, so that's the International Coaching Federation, but I've been accredited. So it's a body that doesn't quite regulate, but it certifies coaching of a certain type. And so I would describe myself as a collaborative coach. So I'm there to help people work through their challenges, like you say, their stuck points, their motivation, their lack of clarity. I'm not really there to tell people what they should do or to give them advice. I'm there to help them figure it out.
It would be so easy if you could, right? If you probably had someone in those moments of time for you. But you're right, that's not what it's about. It's about self discovery at the same time, reflection, problem solving. And again, it's part of that journey or process. And then sometimes people are very focused on the outcome, right? I can get that way
Absolutely.
too. It's like, I just want to be here. Just want, tell me, John, how do I get to it? Right? That's hard.
Yeah, no, it's really hard. And like you say, a lot of people really want someone to tell them which way to go, which decision to make. But ultimately, that doesn't serve that person because even though I have tons of experience and a lot of skills and knowledge, my opinion is only going to be my opinion. It's really based on my personal experience. You, as someone who is experiencing some sort of crisis or challenge, only you really know what's going to be best for you and what's going to feel most engaging and satisfying and lead you towards happiness and those goals. My role is to ask questions, to challenge maybe some of the things you are saying or thinking about what is holding you back or things you should do or things you should believe. And I think that's where having so much experience comes into play.
Right. For a lot of people, letting go is really hard, right? It's, yeah, but I want this. I want this type of job or this type of position or it may be income or salary, right? And again, it's hard to let go or things that have happened in the past as human beings. It's hard for us or that resistance for change.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's so many reasons that we resist change. It's not always fear or lack of confidence. We have, as we said, that investment. There's a lot of different reasons that people don't want to leave where they're at.
Right. I'm just wondering for listeners, what could they expect from executive coaching? Are there tools? Are there questionnaires? Does an initial consult look different than follow ups? Just thinking of myself as a clinician, is there home practice expected? Those sort of things you can
Yeah,
share.
absolutely. It's going to be different from coach to coach, but coaches or many coaches will use specific questionnaires or tools really as a way to help get an understanding of where someone is at starting out in their journey. For myself, I like to use tools, but I don't rely on them all the time. For me, they're more framework to help guide a journey. So speaking with me, an initial conversation, I might call it a discovery session. It's usually a complimentary session. I'll usually put aside 30 to 60 minutes for someone. I never want to rush it. And in that initial conversation, it's really about finding out what challenges someone is facing, what they've tried before, how important overcoming this challenge is to them, what makes that important. And then really what's critical is figuring out where they want to be. What are those future goals, whether they're achievements or transformations? What is it they want to achieve? And then how does coaching fit into that? Am I the right coach for that person? Do I believe that I can help them? Do they believe they can help me? Do they trust me enough? Can I build enough rapport and trust? Can start building something. And then also laying out a bit of a roadmap of what progress would look like for that person. Because ultimately, my number one goal as a coach is to help you succeed. And so it's really important for me as a coach to know what that success looks like. How do you define that success so that we can move you towards that? And then that first gives a chance for someone for that conversation about what is this coaching engagement going to look like as far as duration and frequency, and then what are the costs and
Expectation.
expectations? Yeah, things like that.
Mhm.
So it's really that time to figure out, is this going to work?
That's great. And so we're talking about in terms of career coaching, but executive. Tell me what transitional coaching would look like, right? 'Cause again, people are maybe stuck points, different life stages. Yeah. So maybe if you could tell me a bit of the difference.
Yeah. So when I am working with people, I would say most of them are at some sort of transition point. They are usually in a position, might be in their career. I do focus a lot on people who are coming to me for challenges related to career or to starting a business. But a large part of that is actually figuring out where they want to go. I use this term called the career fog. You're in a situation and you're not quite happy. You're not feeling satisfied. You're not feeling fulfilled. There's something wrong, but you can't quite nail down what exactly is wrong. Where do I start to figure that out? And where do I start to figure out where I want to go next? A lot of the work in that portion of that transitional coaching is about examining your current situation and using that to try to tease out what are the things that are important for you. What are the things that are going to make you happy? What are the things that are going to get you towards that future goal? And then coming up with essentially a set of criteria to use to make decisions about where to go next. Then the next phase, once you have an idea where you want to go, the next phase is really about laying out plans, talking about specifically what needs to happen on action wise. When does it need to happen? How do we maintain your accountability to that? And then as it move forward, really working on any challenges that come up, because no journey is without its hurdles or setbacks.
For sure. It's definitely not linear. Yeah.
Really not.
And that's great that you're transparent and help clients prepare for that, right?
Mhm.
So it's great they help set up a roadmap, create goals in smaller chunks so they feel achievable. And again, if there's any stuck points along the way, just help with turning those challenges into some sort of success. That's great. So you mentioned being certified, which is great because, again, I'm not too familiar with the association or certifications. So, what are the benefits from a coach belonging to different associations, having certain certificates or credentials?
I think there's a number of them. These days, really anyone can technically call themselves a coach. And so many do. So you search coach, you'll find a million. So belonging to a professional organization, having a certification or an accreditation, it gives you as a potential client the knowledge or certainty that the person you're going to has a certain level of training and education.
Okay.
In most cases, their skills have been tested or supervised so that there is that certain level of competence in there. It's likely that also means there are a certain degree of technique involved.
Right.
Another really critical aspect for me is that for most professional organizations, you have to abide by a code of ethics. As a professional, having a specific code of ethics that you're committed to, that you follow, is really important, because it means that you are going to be treated a certain way, and you can count on that. And if you have issues as a client, you can go back to that organization and file a complaint, or you have some recourse. You have someone else that you can go to for information or support in the case that you have problems.
So, belonging to association, you're understanding there's a level of skill, that there's a process, even a process for a client if they have any concerns or needs or wanting to understand more. That's great. There's some sort of governing body. Having recently had that for colleges of psychotherapists, for example, or anyone could have been called that not too long ago. So it's great. I'm hearing too as well that there's overlap between coach and other professions where the
Yeah.
client is, that's great. Social workers, that's what we talk about. Having the client discover their own goals, ideas when they feel it's completed or successful.
Yeah,
It's great. Using a strengths based approach.
absolutely. I love that you mentioned the overlap as well, because there definitely is some overlap on the edges between professional coaching and therapy and social work. And I think another thing that belonging to an association provides is a clear scope of practice.
Yes.
So for me, being a professional is also being very clear on what are the limits of my scope of practice. Where do I need to be sure that if someone has need beyond those, that I refer them out to.
And that's wonderful that you have referrals that you can and offer as well too, right? And it's professional, so it's great that people aren't left hanging and you could suggest or guide to other resources. And just wondering if you see a connection or link between coaching goals and helping others or consulting around mental health and wellness. Do you see like this ripple effect where if you're helping in some areas that they may see changes in others?
Absolutely. Again, talking about boundaries and scopes of practice, I'm very conscious that when it comes to clinical mental health issues, that I need to be referred out. Having said that, a lot of coaching philosophy is based on principles of positive psychology. And within that, we're very focused on the future, on solutions, on a purpose, on goals, and on action. And I think that helping someone to take action, as we mentioned earlier, take small, achievable, incremental action, it's also impossible that doesn't have a positive impact on someone's self-esteem and self-worth, which of course, or hopefully will help to support them in positive mental health.
Right. The taking action and starting to initiate that action plan can always be the toughest step, right? And then
Yeah,
a bit easier afterwards. So it's great to hear that there may be some other areas that it could help benefit people's life. Like you said, it could help build confidence, help formulate maybe new habits.
absolutely. And even we are talking about a bit more of a focused way on things like career and transitions. But even though I might call myself an executive coach or a career coach or even a business coach, as a coach, I understand that every part of someone's life impacts the other. So I might be speaking with CEO of a software development company while we're talking about his family issues. We're talking about his family life, because that definitely impacts how he shows up for work, impacts his energy levels, his focus, his ability to succeed. And obviously, anyone's professional goals and career impacts their family and social life relationships. So it's never, even though a coach might give themselves a very narrow niche, they will be ready to discuss those other challenges, because they relate. Every person is a whole person. They're not just one small portion of their life.
Right. It's almost as if you're going to see a physician about a stomach ache and just talked about that and not the whole person symptoms or stress or
Exactly.
what else is happening, right?
Exactly.
So it's having this, yeah, more of a holistic view or getting a sense of or a snapshot, right? So, and I think that's a great point because there's so many ways that listeners can have a feel supported. Sometimes it's hard to ask for help, but whether it's creating almost a team, if it's working with an executive coach on work goals, and if there are personal issues that are impacting, reaching out to a clinician to assist with that, and or seeing which steps to be prioritized first. And I think it's great to have all these different professions and for people to learn about them.
Yeah, I think it's great. And what you're doing with your podcast and with your project is really great initiative in helping to bring those different kinds of support to people.
Yes, and I just find that there is some sort of gap or challenge for many professionals at an executive or management level who, whether it's a transition or for some reason are moving along and to get that support or guidance. So it's really hard for people to research and find what works for them. So I'm so excited again today to have you here so people understand and learn about business coaching, how they can help and benefit from it. Would you like to share any events coming up, any ways that you can be reached or contacted or?
Yeah, I just had a talk last week. It's actually called Chasing Discomfort. So it was really about how you can explore areas of discomfort for you in order to expand that comfort zone to be able to grow and expand beyond how you see yourself right now. I definitely will be presenting that again, but I don't have any specific dates on the calendar. People can find me on my website, which is bhg-coaching.com. And they can also find me on LinkedIn, John Bowman. I believe it's John Bowman 74 if they want to type it in, but I'm listed there as an executive coach here in Toronto. So hopefully I'll be easy to find.
Great. And would be happy to have you join us again to talk about any of those interesting topics, like you said, chasing discomfort, or we talk about clinically, it's turning towards it or embracing it. So very interesting topics. If people can be connected to the recordings, love to have that link on my site as well. And it's available
I'll
and advertised.
definitely make sure that you have it. Thank you.
That's great. And if any listeners have any other questions or topics of interest, love to have you on board for any live talks or discussions as well too.